When I was 10 years old, my poor dad kept asking, "Hey, Dad, when am I going to learn about money?" He says, "We don't teach school about money."
In this episode, we sat down with Robert Kiyosaki. His book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has sold 43 million copies and remains the top title in personal finance.
I said, "Well, how did I get rich?" Well, he says, "Well, if you stay in school, get your PhD.
Get your PhD.
I said, "Dad, you have a PhD. We're poor." He says, "Well, then you better talk to your best friend's father." That was Rich Dad.
From reading the Communist Manifesto to becoming an advocate for capitalist financial education, Kiyosaki warns about the danger of hyperinflation and central bank control.
Every time you print money, the gap between rich and poor is getting wider and wider and wider. What Marx wanted was this gap between rich and poor.
He also shares 3 lessons to build wealth that he believes can change your life and help you become truly self-sufficient.
Your poor dad, Marxist, good man. He says we should give people money. Well, that's honorable. But why not teach them? Why not teach people to fish versus how to steal fish?
Let's say you're a young person today and you don't have a lot of money. What's your next step? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick. Robert Kiyosaki, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
It's my honor. My honor. I mean, I love what the Epochtimes is doing. I'm so honored to be part of your program. So let's go back real quickly. When I was 18 years old, I read this book here, The Communist Manifesto. And I was living in Hawaii. And I went to school in New York. I went to military school. And my economics teacher says, "You have to read this book." And I went, "Why?" He says, "Because you must know your enemy." And my economics teacher was I went to Kings Point. He went to West Point, Academy graduates. And he says, and he flew the B-17 in World War II, got shot down, captured, all this stuff. He says, "These guys are not stopping." And I went, "Holy mackerel." And then, so I wrote this book here, The Capitalist Manifesto, against this here. Because our school system, as you know, Marx was an academic type, pointy head guy. And our school systems are teaching Marxism. And this here is I just happened to find this. This is my hat from Vietnam. I was a Marine Corps first lieutenant. That was we're gunship drivers. Our call sign was Scarface. And I was at the battle in 1972, 71. I was at the Battle of Quang Tri when the North Vietnamese busted through. And I was going, so we're gunship pilots going in. We couldn't stop them. And the communists were coming through. I was going, "Oh my God, what's happening here?" We lost so many men that day. The worst thing was the North Vietnamese were running. They carry the AK-47, and they run like this. I was a U.S. Marine, and they were defending them. And the South Vietnamese turned and ran. Jan, when I saw the South Vietnamese turn and run, one of the saddest days of my life. And ever since then, I've been fighting communism by teaching capitalism.
Well, you could imagine I was surprised when you came in the door with the Communist Manifesto.
It's worth reading. The average American has no idea. And that's the problem. I have the good fortune or bad fortune to be in the right place at the wrong time. Like the Battle of Quang Tri, when the North Vietnamese broke through.
Well, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you. It's worth fighting. Our freedom is worth fighting for. So when they broke through, I went, "What am I seeing here?" When I was not 18 or 19 years old, I held up a coin, 1965. A silver dollar was no longer silver, it was copper. And what they were doing, the U.S. government, they were violating Gresham's law. And what Gresham's law says, when bad money enters a system, good money goes into hiding. And I went, what the heck's going on here? So in 1965, as an 18-year-old kid, I go to school, at a military school. I read this book, and I see our currency, our dollars going down. We used to be a silver certificate. Now we're a Federal Reserve note. And as most people know, there's a big movement on to end the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, because it's not federal, it's not reserve, it's not a bank. It's a Marxist organization. It's a central bank. And in 1912 or 1913, when the Fed came to America, it was the end of America. And our freedom is being stolen via our money. You said you had to run from your parents. Was it you or your parents ran from Poland?
My parents actually left Poland in 70. Yeah, 1970.
People haven't seen communism. And the problem is our school system, the communists are our professors. We got attacked by 39 professors at Arizona State University. I think the fourth or fifth largest university in America. I was teaching capitalism. And they said, stop. So I respect the Epoch-Times for your fight against communism, Marxism, because I'm still in the fight. I just fight as an author, though. And I have a board game and all this. I teach capitalism. But our schools are taught by Marxists.
Before we jump into dealing with our fraught economy, how to actually build wealth as a young person today, all these types of questions, you also told me that you were actually in Zimbabwe. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Zimbabwe, because I was a student of money. I'm a politically incorrect hunter. So I was out in Zimbabwe, I think in 2000, 2002. And I was there for the collapse of Zimbabwe because they printed too much money. Remember, they had like $25 trillion bill, couldn't buy you an egg. They kept printing money. I went, holy mackerel. And Zimbabwe collapsed. America is doing the same thing. We're now $38 trillion in debt and climbing because of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is Marxist. So I'm in Zimbabwe watching this collapse. I thought I was back in Vietnam again. I was already back from Vietnam. I'm in a truck. I'm a hunter. And when the economy collapsed in Zimbabwe, they called them war vets. These young black guys come up with AK-47s. I went, and I put the gun right here. They took everything. They took the farm. They took it all. They called it reparations. So I just went back this year, 2025, to teach my cash flow game. And the Zimbabwe Economic Council asked me to teach money to Zimbabwe through the cash flow game, And it was such an honor to go back there. So I'm writing a new book called I Kept My Promise. I said, I'll return, I'll come back, and I'll teach. But I've seen too much. Zimbabwe was such a wake-up call. Quang Tri was such a wake-up call. 18, going to military school, reading this book, and then holding up a coin at 18 going, why is our money, why is our silver coins, why are they copper now? And they were stealing our wealth via our money. And that's what happens when central banks take over.
Well, I think we're not quite there yet, not this sort of hyperinflation. I remember seeing that. It was just something, it was kind of unimaginable, the level at which it was growing, even as when a lot younger, I saw that as being hugely problematic. But, how do we deal with $38 trillion in debt?
Can't. So that's why, one of the questions we're talking about before this program started, that's why I own gold mines and I own silver coins, because they can't print gold and they can't print silver. And I own a lot of Bitcoin, Ethereum. I want to get away from my government as much as I can. I hate to say this, but the U.S. government's corrupt. And My friend here is Donald Trump, and we've written 2 books together, and then he became president. We're supposed to write the 3rd book. He goes, "Hey, Robert, I can't write the 3rd book. I'm going to run for president." I said, "Good luck." Just amazing that he keeps going. But we got together to teach money, teach financial education. But our school systems stop us. So it's in academics. Exactly, what Marx believed was the intellectuals should run the world. People like my poor dad, PhDs. They think they're superior to all of us. Just because they went to school and got a PhD, they think they're smarter than you and me.
As we were preparing for this interview, one of my producers mentioned to me that she first heard about you when her father told her, "I'm the poor dad, actually, and you should learn how to, you should learn the rich dad principles." But things have changed since you wrote that book.
Gotten worse.
Yeah. So where are we at today? What is the situation for young people or for their parents or grandparents who want to, help them basically be successful today?
Well, the question I start with is, what did school teach you about money? Why not? It's because our school system's Marxist. They're like my poor dad. They're good people. They just don't know. And their whole value system is, I'm a straight A student. I got my PhD, or I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant, I'm an attorney. I'm smart, but they don't know anything about money. And one of the things that this guy talked about here was income tax. He said, Marx said taxes. Taxes are essential for the spread of communism. Now think about this. America was founded as a tax-free nation. 1773 was a thing called the Boston Tea Party. America was founded as a tax revolt against Mother England. And so 1913, I think, my old man now, when the Fed came in, the next thing was formed was the 16th Amendment, which allowed taxes to come back into America. So what's happening, as you can see it, the gap between rich and poor is getting wider and wider and wider. And every time you print money, fake money, fiat money, I get richer, rich get richer, poor middle class get poorer, because inflation sends my price. I have oil wells because you can't print oil. So I have oil wells. The price of oil goes up. The price of chickens go up. Food goes up. Real estate goes up. But when mom and pop, Mr. and Mrs. Middle Class go to the supermarket, they go, I can't afford to eat anymore. So I think what Marx wanted was this gap between rich and poor. In fact, that was his plan. As if you studied Marx, he says he wanted equality. He says the way you destroy anybody is you pull the poor up, but you pull the rich down. And that's what Marx was trying to do. And so I see all that going on right now. And today, I've never seen such homelessness spreading all across the world, but also America. And I've seen homelessness in Africa and things like this. But we're in Phoenix, Arizona right now. We have whole zones full of homeless people because they can't afford real estate. Their dollar doesn't pay it much. So that's why I started, when I saw in Vietnam, when the North Vietnamese punched through the line. Again, this is my squadron here, and very proud to be U.S. Marine and gunship pilot, and they kept coming. And then they were running like this with their AKs this way. And a few years later, I'm in Zimbabwe, I'm getting the same thing going. It's repeating. It's just repeating.
And just to clarify, with the Marx's intention, the way I understand it, what you said was very interesting, right? What I understand it is he wanted to increase that division, right, between the rich and the poor, so there would be struggle. Did I get that right?
He wanted to bring the poor up and the rich down. his thing was take away the means of. He wanted to control the means of production.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the abolition of private property is what Marx wanted. And this guy, what's his name? I forget his name. Someday you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
But the situation that you described is one where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So they're separating from each other, not coming together. Can you clarify that?
Well, when you print money, I get richer because I own real estate, I own oil wells, I own cattle. Food goes up in price. And then, but the poor and middle class have to pay for it. So my apartment houses go up, but the poor and middle class go homeless. And that's the seeds of communism. That's the seed of revolt. That was the Russian Revolution, Lenin and Stalin. Mm-hmm. It's happening all again. And the way this was so stupid that only an intellectual from a U.S. university or a school would believe this crap. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, it was a good idea. But the only way they could enforce this was by force. Hmm. So you look at what happened in China. They had to use force to get the people to comply with this stupid man's with his ideologue's ideas. In Russia, they had to use force to get them to comply. So that's the Falun Gong and all this stuff. They suppress people because Marx wanted everybody to be equal. Pull the rich down, pull the poor up. And people actually believed that idea. But his primary idea was intellectuals should tell the world how to live. Those are called academics, the liberal left.
And to achieve that revolution, he wanted to destabilize society.
Well, you destabilize it by taking the currency. You make the currency fake, and that's what happened when the Federal Reserve Bank came in 1913, I think. At the same time, the 16th Amendment was passed, which was taxes. Mm-hmm. And America was founded as a tax-free nation. 1773. It wasn't founded in 1776. It was founded in 1773, the Boston Tea Party. And now everybody says, well, you have to pay your taxes. You have to pay your taxes. I'm a capitalist. I pay zero taxes legally. I fight like a dog. I refuse to play that game because what those taxes are used for is to create wars. That's how we finance our wars. Mm. It's tragic what's happening. It's absolutely tragic. And I fought in war. I didn't like doing it. But I realized Marx was like my poor dad, head of the labor union. And my poor dad, what Marx says was, workers of the world unite. So I go home to my high school. My poor dad's head of the teachers union. Workers of the world unite. That sounds familiar. Today, the NEA, National Education Association, the National Extortion Association, is the most powerful labor union in America. And they control our government because this is what talks here. We've got to fight back. So that's why when I heard that the Epoch-Times, you guys were coming to interview me, I said, what an honor, because I've been in the same battle you've been battling. I fight these guys here. And that's why I wrote this book here. And that's why my friend here, Donald Trump, and I fight together for financial education.